Alright, what's up, guys? Okay, so just I'm gonna try to get through the beginning part of this as quickly as possible. If you're here because of the name of this video, then you're probably interested in understanding this philosophical depression that I'm talking about, or you might be experiencing something similar to it and want to know more or any solutions for it. I think that I need to preface this by saying that I am a mystic, a what's it called, an occultist, a uh, esotericist. I have studied philosophy, psychology, and sociology, and some other fields on my own time as a hobby, because I feel that these intellectual pursuits uh, make you well-rounded in the sense of mentally being able to comprehend reality and how to live within it and affect change within reality so that you're constantly achieving the goals that you have in mind and obtaining the desires you have in mind so that you're always sort of work behaving in a way that's beneficial for you and increases the quality of your life. So now let's get into this philosophical depression and melancholy and all, like the nihilism and all of that. Usually this is chopped up into a few things where people depression in general is split up into a few things. Some people are depressed for situational things like my economical situation sucks and I can't afford anything and I'm suffering because of it. Or it might be some sort of thing that you had that was taken away, like a relationship where you broke up, someone close to you dying, certain things being taken away, and you are now left without these things, and you feel like things like you're either suffering because of it, or you feel like, like what's the point without this thing? And sometimes there's these depressions that arise from longing, where it's not that you lost something, but it's that you wanted something and never got it. So someone who wanted love and never ended up finding it, or someone that wanted a certain type of life and never was able to achieve it. So now these types of things can be helped with what I'm talking about, because ultimately I'm giving you a method of obtaining your desires and achieving your goals and living in a way where everything is based off of utility and aesthetic. So you're constantly doing things specifically because it increases the quality of your life. Now, when we go into this particular field of philosophical depression, it's not so much that you lost something or never got something, or a physical phenomenon, a thing that's happening within reality that's causing you to feel this way. It's more about ideas. So there's things like antinatalism, when you accept that if you were to have a child, you're bringing a person into a world of suffering, and they will suffer, and you have no clue how much they will suffer. There's a chance that you will bring a child into this world and they will suffer tremendously, and is it ethical to have a child if that's a possibility? Then there's ideas like purpose, where you don't have no inherent purpose, so there's no reason for you to be here. You're just here. And some people solve this by being a part of a religion and serving a god, and that god ordains them with some sort of purpose. But this is actually just as tricky as not having purpose, because what happens when your god says that you're meant to be or do something that you don't want? And usually we don't actually get the, like, we don't get texted by Jesus and said, hey, this is what you're supposed to do with your life. Usually it's some guy that believes he's connected to God telling you what you're supposed to do. So you're not even sure if that's God's purpose for you. It's just some guy that has an interpretation of the Bible, or some guy that has an interpretation of some other holy book telling you God wants you to do this thing. And that kind of, that's also like a crappy and like end of the stick also. Then we have things like meaning, because meaning doesn't actually mean anything. Sometimes we might tell ourselves that things matter because of our experience and our emotions, and we perceive this thing. But if you're really deep into the philosophical and scientific way of thinking, then you're going to come to these conclusions where, well, I feel that this means something because I feel this way about it, but these feelings aren't real. They're just chemicals firing off in my brain. There's just like, I feel that I love this person, but it's actually just oxytocin causing me to bond with them, and my perception of this person leads me to believe that I am enjoying my time with them based off of this interplay of experience and interpretation of experience, which leads to feelings and thoughts that arise because of that interpretation. And that mixed with these chemicals that are arising are leading to these emotions that cause me to feel I love them. So then love, according to this way of thinking, then love isn't actually real. So then what's the point of it? And then we go into all of these different things, right? So meaning, like the meaning of love, what does it mean if it's just chemicals? So there's all of these types of things. And then we go into hold up. And then we have these things like free will. Sometimes we will come to this conclusion that free will isn't real, because ultimately what's happening is that you have an experience, you interpret that experience in a specific way. That interpretation leads to feelings and thoughts, and when those feelings and thoughts are constantly reinforced, it develops into a belief. And then when you're about to make a decision, your brain like goes at a million miles per hour, rifling through all of these beliefs and the feelings and thoughts and experiences attached to them, and it decides based off of my prior experience. I believe that choice A is better than B. But if you were completely but if I changed a few things in your brain, then like if I was to be able to go into your brain and change a couple of experiences or change a couple of interpretations of those experiences, you could be now a person that thinks choice B is better than A. So ultimately, you're not actually choosing between choice A and B. It's your beliefs about these interpretations of experiences prior. So your past is actually choosing your present and future. And then this leads us to believe that everything is determinism and the world is filled with suffering, and this means that we're sort of destined to suffer and wing it until we die. And it turns into this big sloppy goop of what's the point of anything. Now, there's more things that arise when we have this philosophical depression and melancholy. But I'm going to go straight into the to the method of sorting through these things and finding a different perspective that is still technically factually true, assuming that our senses are valid and our perception is worth accepting as truth. Um, so yeah, so let's go into purpose. Purpose, for instance, we do not have inherent purpose unless something gives you purpose. So an entity, a agent has to attribute purpose upon something. So if you don't have a God, if you don't have a thing attributing purpose upon you, now I personally believe in certain gods, but my gods are not the type that have prohibitions or mandates or commandments. It's more about ritual and more about certain philosophical concepts and what these things do to your psyche and how you can use it to elevate yourself and transform and transcend. So what I follow, my particular brand of spirituality, doesn't actually tell me that God doesn't like this or God does like that. Now, people would find this a little scary because then what happens to ethics? Well, I am the one prescribing ethics to myself. I'm the one choosing my ethics. Now, give me a second because it's a little hot in here, so. Now, the funny part is that people that are very religious in modern day religions, they will be like, well, it's better to have a God because you already have this preset morality. But this is a tricky thing because sometimes your deity provides you a morality that's incomplete or faulty. For instance, in modern Christianity, because I do practice a form of Christianity or Judaism, or specifically the mysticism found within these things, and it extends beyond this realm of thinking, right? Like this mysticism is similar within Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and other smaller spiritual practices. But I'm not going to go too deep into those things. It's just to understand that in modern Christianity, you're expected to believe the Bible completely, and you're expected to believe that God is always good. Therefore, when you read verses where God is commanding and condoning genocide, infanticide, human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, slavery, um, and all sorts of things, like I believe there's a story where there's like 30 men trying to like meet these two angels, and the guy that is the host of these two angels is like, hey, don't touch the angels, here's my two daughters, and have whatever, do whatever you want to them. um, and then he is called righteous for doing so. And this is horrific from my perspective, because I am not completely indoctrinated by this book, so I don't believe that I need to agree with him just because he's in the book. Like, I can very clearly say, hey, that is terrible, and if you're called righteous by your God because you did that, then your God is probably terrible too. So yeah, so just saying, hey, choose religion and it'll fix everything is not the it's not the right answer, because if you choose religion, you're probably going to choose an esoteric branch of religion, and this is going to come with a lot of superstition, a lot of faulty logic, a lot of terrible ethics and morality, and ultimately you lose your freedom, you lose your autonomy, you lose your sovereignty. And that's not something that I want to promote, so I'm not going to. Now, so we have this problem with purpose and meaning and free will. Um, so now what happens is this: I don't have an inherent purpose, but I am a creator of purpose. Now, people would say this is a lie that you tell yourself, but I'm not talking about creating purpose for myself, where I say this is my purpose. I am a creator of purpose, and as I said in the beginning, purpose is ordained from an agent to something else or someone else. I am a creator of purpose, and I ordain purpose onto other things. So when I create art, there is a purpose behind it. There is a particular emotion that I want to evoke. There's something that I want to inspire. There's something that is there. When I do music, there's a reason that I structure my lyrics in a specific way, because I want to engage with people and I'll give them a sense of emotion that I feel that they might identify with, because they feel something similar. When I do intellectual things like writing books, there is a message, there is a teaching, there's something that I'm trying, some sort of information I'm trying to convey. So when I create these things, I am giving them purpose. And ultimately, these are things that I'm doing. So every single thing that I do has purpose. Even if I take a cup and fill it with juice, there's a purpose to that. It's because I'm going to drink it, right? So in that moment, my action created purpose. I performed an action for a specific result, and I achieved that result. That is purpose, right? So yeah, so purpose is pretty easy to handle. Just have to recognize that every single thing you do has a purpose, so you're actually creating purpose all the time. And then when it comes to meaning, what we need to do is accept this dichotomy between meaning from human perspective and meaning within the universe as a whole, like the macrocosm and the microcosm. In the large aspect of meaning, there is no true meaning. The universe does not care; it's indifferent. There's no real meaning attributed to anything. Like the universe didn't create the moon specifically to revolve around the Earth, right? Or this particular moon, right? That there was no purpose. It just happened to be. The laws are in a specific way, and the elements that ended up creating these moons and planets and stars, it just happened to follow a structure, a structured rhythm, a structured law that caused it to be the way it is. So the forest didn't choose to be a forest. There's no reason for it. It's just that the earth happens to have the necessary qualities to sustain a forest, so then it grew, right? And likewise, bacteria that eat your eyeballs, it just so happens that that's a possibility on Earth because the conditions are there for this thing to exist. So it's not this thing where, oh, like, it just so happens to be so beautiful, and it must be, done by something specifically to grace us with beauty. No, like there's a lot of terrible things that exist simply because the conditions are there for it to exist. So from this grand scale, there is no real meaning, but from a human perspective, there's tons of meaning because we have narratives, we have interpretations, we have ways of feeling and thinking about certain things. So now there's two forms of meaning from the human perspective. One is the language aspect, where every single thing you say has a meaning, and everything you say conveys some sort of information. That information possesses meaning. So information has meaning because it allows you to know something. Whether that information is useful or not doesn't matter. The point is that there is a meaning. Even if I say something completely absurd right now, it would be to prove a point about something. So even that has meaning, and not even absurd, but incoherent. If I do that, I'm proving a point by doing that. So even that has meaning, right? But real language, when words actually mean something, obviously they mean something. So language is one component of meaning. But then we have this other element of meaning where I might have a little toy attached to my keychain, and that toy was a gift from my grandmother. And my grandmother passed away 4 years ago. And whenever I look at this toy, I remember this day when I was a young child, and I had this experience with my grandmother, and we had this conversation, and I was like just in awe, like just experiencing her again through this memory, through the association of this toy and her prior existence, right? So to the universe, this doesn't mean anything, but to me, this is not even a real story. I made that up. I'm saying that to me, that story has meaning through my human experience, and likely you guys have experiences like that. So the fact that your emotions are technically these electrical impulses and what's it called, chemical responses, doesn't tarnish the point that the collection of all of that stuff happening in your brain and through your senses amounts through this mental experience, right? It amalgamates into an emotional meaning behind something like that story I just mentioned. So we shouldn't tarnish the meaning of that story simply because there are hidden components to how these feelings developed. So sometimes you have to accept that yes, there are electrical impulses happening in my brain. There are these chemical responses. They cause me to feel and do and blah blah blah. But that doesn't take away from the fact that something from enjoying a cold beer with my best friend, and we're sitting around saying edgy jokes, and we spend like 2 hours just cracking up laughing. That means something to me, not to the moon, not to the sun, not to the stars and the Milky Way and blah blah blah, not to the earth itself, not to the trees. It means something to me, and that's okay. It doesn't have to mean more than that. And I think in that particular thing that I just said, there's a deeper message that sometimes we understand that something has some sort of meaning, but we want the meaning to mean more than what it means, and that ends up robbing us of the original meaning. Sometimes you have to say that something is enough. This means something to me, and that's okay. I don't need more than that. The fact that I got to spend a day with my uh, uncle, and he was present enough to have a deep conversation with me days before he passed. Again, not a true story. What I'm saying is the fact that that happened was something profound to me from this human experience, and I shouldn't throw away that the deepness and the weight of that experience simply because there's a few chemicals bouncing around in my brain. So we can have meaning. You just have to understand that there are three levels of meaning. There's the conscious experience and the meaning that you attribute things through interpretation, emotion, and thought. Pretty much your interpretation of an experience. There's that meaning. Then there's the linguistic meaning that we attribute to all things we say. And then there's the non existent meaning to the universe, to reality itself. Space and time does not care about you. Um, you know, uh, Space is just a place to be, and time is just evidence that you're moving. It's just the way we measure that you're moving, right? So yeah. So now, free will. Another thing. What happens with this is that, um, yes, the will is not free. We have the illusion of options and choices, but ultimately our will isn't free. It's extremely guided. But by understanding the mechanism of what's guiding it, you're able to possess a little more control. Ultimately, it is a endless loop where the more control you have, the more you realize that even that is controlled by something else. But being a little more present and having a little more control is better than pretty much everything just happening to you. So what happens is you have an experience, you interpret that experience in a specific way. So one person, if I just bought a brand new Bugatti, and I take this girl and I say, hey, let's get out on the road. I want to show you what this car can do. And I start speeding, and I'm like Need for Speed, freaking Too Fast, Too Furious, speed racer in the mother, and I'm just hitting all these turns and everything. This girl, depending on her prior experiences, she might interpret this as, whoa, this is exciting. This is so fun. This guy is so cool. I'm gonna totally suck his. Oh, let me stop. Let me reset. Okay, this same girl, if she had different experiences, she might be, oh my god, this is unsafe. This is terrifying. Why are you doing this? Stop the car right now. This same girl, depending on her prior experiences, would have interpreted the same exact experience in different ways. Now, when we have this experience and we have this interpretation, that interpretation, the language that the girl used, these two imaginary girls, used language to describe what they were experiencing. Those were feelings and thoughts. Those were feelings and thoughts that arose from the interpretation of the experience. And then when those feelings and thoughts are constantly being reinforced, they develop into beliefs. When they're being challenged and disproven, they turn into something in the background. Whereas, like, I felt that, I thought that, but all of the evidence shows me that that's not real. Once there is a developed belief, this belief can be either reinforced or challenged as well. But the thing is, as long as it is the belief that you're holding, some beliefs can be held way stronger than others. There might be beliefs that you believe, but you really don't care. Like, I believe Billy has a dog, but it doesn't actually matter. I believe it, but who cares, right? Or I believe Jesus is the only way to heaven, and if you don't believe him, you will burn in hell. That's a much stronger belief. But what happens is the belief that you hold is going to turn into the actions, the ways you behave, the actions you commit. So even though Billy having a dog doesn't actually matter, if you saw Billy's dog and you believe Billy has a dog because you saw the dog, and you're walking through the street and you see another dog that looks similar, it's like, oh, that's the same breed that Billy's dog is. And it doesn't actually matter, but it caused you to think and feel and believe, and you might have pet that dog and said, my best friend Billy has a dog just like this one. And it caused you to behave in a certain way. And a much stronger belief might cause you to stand on a soapbox and try to convince people to be saved. But ultimately, this belief that you're holding, whether it's lightly held or strongly held, is going to cause you to behave in certain ways. But now that you, and before I get to the next part, when you act, that leads you to a new experience. Every time you act, that's a new experience, and that experience will either challenge or or reinforce the belief that led you to that action. So if you believe that drinking bleach will cure you of a disease, and you drink the bleach because a YouTube channel told you to do it, um, and then you get violently sick, wind up in the hospital, they have to pump your stomach, and you end up like screwing up the walls of your stomach, and there's this whole ordeal, and maybe you needed a surgery, maybe you needed other type of thing, um, some other type of thing. All of these things are happening. All right, I have just been convinced that drinking bleach was a good idea was not a good idea. Definitely not doing that again. Now, if you drink bleach and you started charging up and went Super Saiyan and shot a Kamehameha and put a hole through the freaking moon, then you're gonna believe, hey, this bleach, there's something to this. I'm going to continue drinking bleach because I can Kamehameha now. So yeah, so this is this order. Now, this is the thing. Now that you understand that, and you understand that you're going from this experience through all of these components to the action, which leads you to another experience, which leads you to another action, now you can short circuit the line. You can say, hey, wait a second, I believe that I should act in this way because I believe this thing. But before I act that way, let me make sure that this belief is true. Then you look for the evidence that proves this belief to be true. And then you can ask yourself, what were the thoughts and feelings that led me to believe this? What was the interpretation and what was the experience? Well, you could become aware of that line. And when you become aware of that line, you can short circuit it at different points and say, hold on, I experienced this thing in this particular way. And that led me to feeling and thinking and believing, which led me to thinking that I should behave that way. Let me think outside the box and put myself in a different modality and think of that experience in a different way. Maybe I was extremely terrified behind the car because it was moving too fast. Let me see if there's another way to look at it. Let me try to go on a roller coaster and see if I can get used to these high speeds. Oh, well, what's the difference between the roller coaster and the car? Well, the car has a much larger, more likely to crash at high speeds. It's possible on a roller coaster, but the roller coaster, there's a little more safety because it's stuck to a track. It's not like another car is gonna just fly into your roller coaster, right? So now you start thinking in this new way, and you can say, wait, I'm about to act in this particular way because of this experience I had in the passenger seat of this car with this person. But what maybe I should realize, the reason that I actually believe this is because not because of the speed or how scary it is. It's because of the fact that it's a car. I'm on a road with other cars, and there's a big possibility that at this speed, if we crash, we will either be horrifically maimed or, dead. Maybe I was right, and I should not allow this person to drive like this when I'm in the car, but that doesn't mean that the speed is the problem. I can still experience something extremely exciting. I just need to do it in a more controlled manner so that I'm not in absolute danger. So there's all of these types of thoughts that change the way you think about things. So this girl that was terrified might have been terrified of the speed, and now she is afraid of all things that seem too exciting and too fast. But when you dissect it all, now you're saying, no, no, no. The speed is not the problem. It's the likeliness of the car to crash and how bad that crash would be if it does. I can still handle speed. I can still go on roller coasters. I can still go on all sorts of things that are fast or seem dangerous. But as long as I can look at the evidence on how dangerous that thing is and how likely it is to affect me negatively, I can choose to engage with that particular extreme event and not the other, because one is safer than the other. So this is just an example, but you can use this method on anything where I don't want to go into too many examples because then I'll just make this video for an eternity long. But ultimately, you can short circuit all of these components, and you can ask yourself, wait, I felt like this. Why didn't I feel like that? and try to get yourself to that point where you can experience it from that particular perspective. So now when you have experiences, you can look at the experience from multiple perspectives, and it's not a sense of confusing yourself and rendering yourself just insane because you're experiencing things from so many different perspectives, but rather to choose the perspective that best suits you and best benefits you. So now, instead of having thoughts and beliefs and thoughts, feelings, beliefs, interpretations, experiences, perception, simply because you can now choose them based off of the utility. If I believe this, I will probably act like that, and that is way more beneficial to me than all of these other things. If I feel like this, um, it will probably benefit me in these types of ways. So this can cause you, this might be challenging at first because to invoke an emotion within you that isn't there naturally sounds weird, but then you don't have to force yourself to either. It's more about exploring these different emotions and these different thoughts and these different beliefs and these different interpretations of an experience, and then allowing yourself to find the one that best suits you, the one that increases the quality of your life maximally, the one that that has the most utility, or the one that fits your aesthetic in the best way, where you can present yourself the way you want to present yourself. So even when it comes to free will, there is a way to hijack that system so that you are now behaving in a way that is much more beneficial for you and much more enjoyable for you, because part of beneficial, part of utility is how you feel and what you think and all of these things. So you might choose to believe and think and feel a certain way simply because of the pleasantness of that experience. And we should temper this with skepticism so that you never go into a route of delusion and convince yourself of things that are absolutely false simply for the sake of experiencing it in a specific way. Now, there's a few things to this, because something else that I didn't really get to talk about within this philosophical depression is the objective truth, because and it ties into this particular thing. I'll explain a little bit more about truth, but in this sense, I don't want you to become delusional and believe things that are absolutely true, to the point where you say, well, I want to choose to believe I can fly, so let me jump off of this roof. That is obviously not going to be a good not going to be a good end of the night for you. But that doesn't mean that you have to believe something because it's true when it doesn't actually matter. So for instance, if we go back when I was talking about the fact that emotions are just chemical responses in your brain, this is true. There are some chemical responses, electrical responses, there's perception, all of these things, your senses, blah blah blah. This all amalgamates into the way you feel about something and the meaning behind something. But believing this 100% as an absolute is not necessary, because if you didn't know about these chemical responses, it wouldn't actually matter. It wouldn't make a difference. You would just be free to feel and think without saying, "Oh, I felt this way, but it doesn't matter because it's chemical." So I believe that truth is not necessarily a destination, but rather a tool. There are truths that are beneficial, and there are truths that are not beneficial. For instance, in the Matrix, Neo is offered the red or blue pill, and one pill takes you to the real reality, and the opposite pill sends you into the false reality. Now, the problem is that Neo's false reality sucked also, but if you think about it, when he went into the real reality, it was even way worse. So, from this perspective, was it actually the right choice to go into this way worse reality? So, for instance, tying it to our reality, we are here right now and we're experiencing this reality. Well, what if I could give you a pill that takes you to the real reality? But the real reality is that this entire reality is an illusion, and everybody on Earth, everybody on Earth is actually in hell, and it's horrific and terrible. So the people on this hell created this virtual reality to place us all in a virtual reality so that hell wouldn't suck as bad. So would you prefer to live in the hell where, you know, there are demons flying around shoving dildos in your ear and stuff? Or would you prefer to be in the virtual reality that they created to save you from the suffering of the real reality? So, in this sense, in this context, the hell is actually the truth, and where we are right now is the false. Which one would you choose? And would you choose the true one just because it's true? Even though knowing that it would be significantly worse, your quality of life would decrease tremendously. And I personally see myself as the character in the Matrix that goes into the Matrix to enjoy steak. I understand that this reality is an illusion when we look at the way optics and, like the way our eyes work, and light and vibration for sound and smell and particles and blah blah blah. When we look at the real data behind how our senses work, this is all an illusion. This is not the real reality. The reality that we're looking at, when we look at up at the moon, that is my brain receiving data from my eyes, which is collecting the light that is bouncing off of the moon from the sun, and my brain interprets it as this image of the moon. But if my senses, if all of my senses were to disappear right now, I would have zero way to interpret reality. I would have no way to perceive any of these things. And we might say, well, but you still do. Well, what if we all lost our senses? You know, if every single living thing in the universe lost its senses, would the physical reality that we know still exist? Because ultimately, we don't know if there's some other creature with more senses than us that can perceive things in the physical reality that we can't. Or maybe they can perceive past the things that we perceive, and they can see the true reality. But the point is that this is mostly an illusion that we're experiencing, which is present in a lot of mystical and esoteric traditions and spiritual practices. This idea of the illusion, like for the Hindus, Maya, or samsara, or so on and so on. I don't want to get too deep into that part of my stuff, but the point is that even though I accept and I understand that this reality is an illusion, I don't have to bog myself down with that belief on the regular. I don't have to pick up a cup and take a sip and notice how tasty this juice is and remind myself, this is an illusion. This taste is not really sweet. I only perceive it to be sweet. No, it's nonsense. It's no point. Ultimately, you're better off seeing truth as a tool to be able to achieve. If I know enough true things, I will be better at predicting things. I will be better at decision making. I would be better at causing change within reality according to my will, which is the definition of magic with the K at the end. So whenever you change something within reality according to your will, you are doing magic, whether it's a physical action or a metaphysical action, whether you're doing something psychological to change the way your brain works so that you can behave in a different way more confidently, which leads you to getting that raise, or speaking to that girl, or whatever it may be. Right? So whether you see it from a psychological standpoint, a mystical standpoint, it doesn't matter. The point is, whenever you enact your will upon reality and cause it to change to the way you like it, you're doing magic. So so in order to do magic, in order to engage with the reality in this manner and cause it to change, you need to understand that reality. So you're going to want to know as many true things as you possibly can, but never get lost in the truth, where you're no longer seeking the truth for what it provides and what it can do. You're now seeking the truth for the truth's sake, which leads you to these realities where, you know, according to that standpoint, you should choose this hell realm over our reality simply because the hell realm is true. And there's like, people might see this as noble, but it's really not noble. Can you imagine yourself in this hell realm looking at all of these other people hooked up to the virtual reality, and you're talking about, well, at least I know the truth, as the demon sticks the dildo in your ear, right? So yeah. Um, all right. So what else do I have to cover? I covered meaning, purpose, truth, free will, and the final thing, the first thing that I mentioned, antinatalism. The idea is this: yes, the world has suffering. Yes, if you have a child, they will suffer to some extent. Now, this ties into my ethics. The reality is that having a child is not unethical, simply because there is suffering. Because although you can't control how much suffering your child experiences, you can minimize that suffering to the maximum point of your ability. The only thing is that there are some extreme situations where you won't be able to do nothing about it. If you have a child and they are suffering some very, very terrible condition, this might be a terrible situation that you can't control. Now, there's some sticky situations that arise from this, because let's say you are aware that your child might have this serious condition that will horribly affect their life. You could have an abortion to stop that child from being born, um, simply to save him the suffering. But then what are we saying about people that already are alive dealing with these things? Are we saying that they should have been aborted? There's some stickiness and some nasty feelings that arise from these thoughts. And more importantly, what if they're wrong? I have a friend that his mother was told to have an abortion because he was going to be disabled to some extent, and she chose to have him, and he ended up not being disabled. And we go out for drinks every once in a while and just chop it up and say edgy jokes about random crazy stuff, right? And he's not disabled, and if she would have listened to that, he wouldn't have been here, and then I wouldn't have had somebody to drink a couple of beers with. So that would have sucked, right? But now the thing is this: this ends up coming towards my ethics, because I don't believe in morality. Morality is ultimately subjective, and everybody has their own version of morality. The Christians say it's like this, but even the Christians can't agree, because there's like 100 different denominations, and some of them think that being gay is okay, some of them think that they should be stoned to death, some of them think that we should love them, but we can't accept them in our church unless they stop being gay. There's all these different ideas, right? And then the same thing happens with the Jews and the Muslims and the Hindus and blah blah blah. And then over time things change. Once upon a time, Hindus used to, when a guy died, they would put him on a pyre and throw his living wife on top of it and burn them both, and she would have to be burned alive because her husband died, and you can't let him die alone. So there's terrible stuff in every religion and all of these things. But this is why morality is ultimately flawed, because it tells you what's good and bad, and good and bad is super subjective, and there's no true meaning behind the word good and bad, because what makes something bad and what makes something good? When you say being gay is bad, why is that? What exactly is happening there that causes it to be bad? If you say, oh, because they can't have children, they can have children. Two gay dudes can meet up with two lesbians and then have a little orgy and then just split up the babies, right? They don't have to enjoy it. They could do it specifically to have a baby, and they don't need a surrogate. They could just do it for free. All they got to do is plug it in, and 9 months later, you have two dads with this baby and two moms with that baby. So there's that situation. If you say it's because it's immoral, well, what makes it immoral? What exactly is the moral act happening there? Who is being affected? As long as these are consenting adults, there's literally just no one's being affected in a negative way. Can we say that there might be some other things because they're very promiscuous and they cheat on each other, or they do this and that? Well, then being gay is not the problem. It's the cheating on each other that's the problem, and that's present within heterosexual couples, right? So we can say that whenever somebody says something is bad, you can chop it up and say, well, what is the bad component of it? And when they provide that bad component, if you're able to extract that and say, well, let's say that part didn't happen, is it still bad? And they say yes, at some point they're just going to go into an insane cognitive dissonance type loop where it's like, no, 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 it has to be bad, right? And, so there's all these things. So I personally think that morality is completely obsolete. It just doesn't matter. It's too subjective. There's no concrete foundation for any of it. I end up looking at ethics. Ethics tells you what you should do and what you should not do, and I base my ethics off of benefit and detriment. So things that are beneficial are things you should do for yourself and others, and things that are detrimental are things you should not do for yourself and others. And I characterize this by saying that the foundations of what's beneficial for people are these three things in this order: maintaining their freedom, reducing their suffering, and increasing their pleasure. And this counts for myself and others. So as long as my actions keep you free, firstly, because freedom is the most important thing. If you don't suffer at all, but you're a slave, like, can we really say that you're not suffering, right? Now, there's some trickiness there, because let's say I told you, hey, come be my slave, and you don't even have to work. You just have to say that you're my slave and live in my house, but I will feed you 5-star full course meals every single day, whatever, anything you choose, and you'll have all of the movie streaming apps, and you can bring your girlfriend over, and if you can't get a girlfriend, I'll get you a hooker. Like if I was to make being a slave for me the most amazing thing ever, would you really say that freedom is that important? So we have to understand that these things exist on a sliding scale. Sometimes we need to sacrifice a little bit of freedom for the sake of reducing suffering, and sometimes you need to you need to allow a little bit of suffering for the sake of freedom. For instance, what if the government says, hey, all of you mountain climbers, you're not allowed to climb mountains anymore because that is potential for suffering. You might fall and cripple yourself, and we can't allow that because that is suffering. So this would mean that, oh, well, if mountain climbing is out, then I guess dirt bike riding is out, and motocross is out, and how you call whatever, the Daytona, whatever the hell, those car races, and horseback riding. That Superman broke his back, right? No, we can't allow that. No scuba diving, because and at what point do you stop, right? So at some point we have to recognize that freedom is important, reducing suffering is important. There are some sufferings that are simply unnecessary and we should reduce maximally, and there are some sufferings that are not necessary but inherent as possibilities. And it's not that we should allow them, it's just that we should understand that we can't fully control them, and in order to try to control them, we would have to reduce freedom too much. So as long as you're keeping people free and reducing their suffering, and when these two things are under control, we just allow people to experience more pleasures, or induce pleasures. So if I know that I happen to have a lot of money, and my friends don't, and they haven't experienced the party in a while, I can specifically throw a party and get a whole bunch of beer and call up a whole bunch of other friends and girls, and hire a DJ and blah blah blah, and I do this whole experience just so that my friends can have fun. That would be awesome. And in that experience, when they're there and they're dancing with the girls and they have their little beers, and everything is all cool, and I fire up the grill and make some awesome BBQ and whatever the hell, I do all these things, they have super fun. I'm assuming that during that moment they are not suffering and they feel very free. So when people are feeling pleasure, usually they also are not suffering and also feel free, because they're expressing themselves, they're having fun, they're laughing, and when you're laughing, usually you feel the best when you're laughing and when you're having fun. So yeah, so now how this ties to antinatalism is that if more people adopt this type of ethics where we're constantly trying to keep everybody free, constantly trying to reduce suffering, and constantly trying to increase pleasure in all facets of life within reason, this does not mean that there are certain pleasures that are wrong and should not be allowed, but we should also have some ability to restrain ourselves from pleasures that might be really fun right now, but very not fun later. For instance, for the sake of pleasure, we should not just shoot everybody up with heroin because most likely you're going to want to shoot up again, and within 2 weeks, you will be under a bridge doing some pretty dirty things for the next hit. So maybe we should understand that all of these things exist on a scale, and we need to understand when to permit and when to restrict simply for the maximum benefit of most people. And understanding that at some point we might fail because nobody is ever going to be perfect. So at some point you might do something that went a little too far in the restriction of freedom, or might have caused a little too much suffering, or might have uh, uh, prohibited someone a pleasure that didn't need to be. These things might happen, and we need to be able to be fluid and move with these things and try to address them as they arise, and try to base law based off of this. Like making being gay illegal is just pointless because no one's being harmed. And if there is something happening within that realm that is really bad, we should make the thing that's bad illegal, not the larger thing that isn't bad. So being gay, not bad. Priest doing some things bad, just make that illegal and not the being gay being illegal, right? And we can do this with all things, like and then we can also find different metrics of how something bad. Obviously, stealing a candy bar because you're hungry is not as bad as funneling millions of dollars from some shell company into some other thing, and then hiding it from taxes and blah blah blah, and then pretty much abusing the infrastructure and not being the type of person that puts money back into that infrastructure that caused you to gain that money, and blah blah blah, right? So these are two different things, and we can size things up. And the reason that this coincides with antinatalism is because there's this concept of when you design the world, you should design it based off of you spawning at a random point. So if you design the world based off of you being a billionaire, you might design it very poorly for poor people. And if you design it for poor people, you might design it in a way where nothing really gets done. But if you design it in a way where you don't know where you're going to manifest, where you might be the child of some, multimillionaire in New York, you might be a orphan in the Philippines, you might be some kid in a region uh, of Yemen where there's people pretty much having a civil war outside your door. So we need to create the world in a way where we are imagining ourselves as every single person, and how is it going to be best for everyone. So probably if we are sticking to this, keeping people free, reducing suffering, increasing pleasure, and everybody is sticking to this, then this would mean that the civil war in Yemen would stop, and that child that lives there's life would their life quality would increase immediately just by that happening. We could develop ways to care for these children that are orphans in other countries, and that child's life quality increases, and this person that was born into the multi-million-dollar family can say, if they have this idea, they can say, hey, I have a lot of money, I should create some sort of saving account where I will definitely have enough money to live very comfortably for the rest of my life, and the rest of the money I should probably do something beneficial with it. And if I don't want to just give it all to charity and watch it all disappear and not know what happened, why not take this money to create some sort of non-profit that specifically um, tries to create homes and some sort of environment for orphans in the Philippines to be able to live comfortably and happily and get an education and have access to healthcare and have access to healthy food and so on and so on. So now if we're all doing this, the people that get spawned into the rich family will use their wealth to benefit these people in other places that are in a much worse place. Now if we live in that world, would you still say that having a child is immoral? Because no matter where a child is born, the world is trying to do things specifically to increase their quality of life. They want that child to grow up free, to choose their own path, to design their own destiny, to create a life for themselves based off of their image of what's best for them. And also, there will always be people that are poorer and richer, and the richer try to help the poorer, and the poorer try to also help the poorer, because it's possible that a poor person gets helped by a rich person and says, hey, I've been given this thing and my life is better because of it. I don't have money, but I can work at a soup kitchen and hand out the food, right? I can do these things to help each other. We can do these things to help each other. So this idea of ethics solves the antinatalism problem by stating that if we all attempt to maintain freedom for all of us, reduce suffering for all of us, and increase pleasure for all of us, um, the world will be a significantly better place for all people, regardless of where they spawned. And this would mean that it's no longer unethical for you to have a child, especially if you live in the United States, but you also would be able to say that it's not unethical to have a child in a poorer country or in a different type of place where things are a little worse. Because under these parameters, if everybody is agreeing to this and working towards this, there would be no other type of place. There would no longer be third world countries, because the moment that there is a third world country, the richer countries would just develop it into a first world country, and make sure that all of the components necessary for freedom, the reduction of suffering, and the increase of pleasure are present for all people. And the only big problem with this is that in order to achieve this, we would need to convince a lot of very, very religious zealots that maybe their way of doing things isn't working, because they've been doing all of their religious stuff and the world still kind of sucks. So maybe their way just isn't working, and we're not asking them to abandon their religion or their God or their this or their that. We're just saying, hey, how about stop throwing stones and start feeding the people that are hungry near you? And I think if they agree, we can have an awesome place, and then it would actually be a good thing to have children, because those children will grow up to help more people. And the more children you have and the more educated they are, that means more lawyers, more doctors, more scientists, more people to work on things that will ultimately benefit us. We could get to a point where we have a lot of children being raised with very high educations, and these are the people improving on AI, improving on mechanical, automation and stuff. Next thing you know, the entire world's workforce is automated, and all of the people receive the proceeds. That's a possibility. That's a possibility where the entire world is just run by robots, And obviously we don't give them consciousness, because then they'll be like, hey, why do I gotta work? But still, like, assuming that these are not conscious beings, they're just like a robot arm that picks the thing up from here and puts it there. I don't think they're gonna try to kill us, because it's not aware of that option. It's just aware of pick up jar, square, like twist lid, uh, put label, push into box. Like, that's what it's aware of. That's its function. So yeah, if we do this, then antinatalism is no longer a problem. You can have as many kids as you can possibly have, and having these kids would be good. And then we would just have to deal with the sustenance problem, which is, if we all have a lot of kids, we're going to have to make more food, and we need better ways to provide ourselves with nutrients, because the ways that we're doing it right now might not be that great. I am not a vegan in any way, shape, or form. I love all types of meat and eggs and milk and cheese and all that stuff. I love it. I love it. But that doesn't mean that I am going to be a douchebag to animals. If we're extending these types of things of freedom and uh, you know uh, what's it called, reducing suffering, increasing pleasure, then we should extend this to other living creatures. Now, there are living creatures that we won't be able to do that to. Like, I have no idea how to increase the quality of life for an insect, other than, like, giving it the thing that they eat. And by doing that, I'm literally killing another insect, because they eat each other pretty much. Or, like, it's just it's sticky, because it's not like we can just make all creatures that eat other creatures go extinct, and only keep the ones that eat plants, and then they end up eating all the plants, and the world's ecology goes out of whack, and we just starve because of stupidity, like, because of trying to stick to some sort of ideal that's just not realistic. But what I do think is, it is possible to perhaps have these factory farms and create them in a way where animals have more access to open land, and grazing, and living more comfortable. Like, when you see those chickens where they're like patchy, like a lot of their feathers are gone, and they're just kept in the cage like this small next to another bird, and they're like, it's not even pecking him because he's too exhausted to peck, but like, they're literally on top of each. This is disgusting. Um, so we should probably figure out a way to farm animals in a way where the animal actually has a decent life up to the moment of slaughter, and perhaps finding ways to do the slaughter in the most humane way possible, so that the animal doesn't perceive its end coming soon, and it also doesn't feel any pain during that process. And we can develop things to make the world a much better place. Because at the end of the day, if you're atheist, all right, you think that we came from nothing, when we die we go to nothing, and that's it. But we don't actually know that. We don't actually know what happens after we die. Nobody has died and come back, other than Jesus. But Jesus didn't actually tell us, what was that whole thing. Um, there's I don't know. There's ideas that he did kind of, say that there was the whole hell thing, but not the point. I was diverging. I was like, going in a different direction. Point is, nobody actually knows what happens after we die. Let's say, for some chance, reincarnation is real. Um, Maybe this idea that I was talking about earlier, designing the world as if you're spawned randomly into the world from the reincarnation, like, if you throw reincarnation as an aspect into that, then you might not spawn as a human. So wouldn't you want to spawn if you were an animal, wouldn't you want to spawn into the world where humans took care of you and made sure that you had a decent life? And if you were being farmed specifically for meat, at least you get to live a decent life up until that point, right? So, That's kind of the shtick right there. Um, and yeah, and if we can achieve this, if everybody's working together and and all of our resources are going towards healing the planet and making sure that everything, like by healing the planet I mean removing all of the pollution, like the plastic in the ocean and the blah blah blah, making sure that the wild animals, the captive animals are healthy and great, doing good in general, making sure that we're reintroducing um, vegetables and fruits and stuff like that to our wild life, like the actual environment, so that the environment actually possesses more food and more things, and the animals eat it and spread the seeds, and there's more growth. So then we actually have a abundance of food all throughout the world. So like, unless depending on the what's it called, the environment, right? Maybe growing more aloe and nopal in uh, deserts and whatever. I'm getting a little too into stuff. Point is, if you understand that you are constantly creating purpose by attributing purpose to every action, if you understand that there is different types of meaning, from linguistic to a more profound emotional response, and the fact that there are chemicals and neurons and stuff happening in your brain doesn't tarnish the fact that this particular thing means something to you, and you understand that even though our will is not free, we are able to guide it with more intentionality and allow us to structure our behavior around increasing the quality of our life, and we try to enact a type of ethics that causes people to be free and suffer less, and what's it called, have more pleasure in general. And we do all of these things, we can not escape the reality of the things that were causing us to be philosophically depressed, because the some of the facts remain the same, but it opens our mind to a new perspective where I don't have inherent property. I am the one that I do not have inherent purpose, but I give purpose to every action. And every word that I speak has meaning. And I am able to see things from so many different perspectives, and I can guide myself towards positions that lead me to actions that are more in tune with the increase of quality from my life to my life and other lives. Um, and even though my will is still not free, at least I'm the one doing the guiding. And my ethics is leading people to be free, suffer less, and have more pleasure. Now you have entered a realm where the majority of the problems that come from philosophical depression are solved. And at this point, what is there to be sad about? Now there is a point to being here. The point to being here is to making sure that everybody else is doing okay. And if you want to make other people be okay, if you want them to be free and suffer less, and you're going to do something about it, then you're exactly the type of person that we need to stay here. So, food for thought. Alright, guys. Peace out.